I know this is, again, I just can reiterate that these are not easy topics to discuss, and yet they're critical. And we want to deal with them with our eyes wide open, but also being as appropriate as we can to be discreet and not be talking about things that are just done in ways that are not helpful. So I'm going to dive in now and talk about contracts. It's something that Carrie and I have had a chance to navigate with, let's see, at least 4 kids. Now we're on our 5th kid. So we've gone through contracts quite a bit. We've gone through a number of contracts. Carrie has some actual contracts that we've had. And it's been a very interesting journey, this whole reality of contracts. So let's talk about what this actually means and how they can be valuable. They're a beautiful tool for guidance. They're part of how you're going to parent. Why? They enable conversation. Sitting down to talk to your kids about a contract is going to be a conversation about what? Your vision and your values. The things that are important to you and how they play out in the digital world. So this is a great opportunity to have a kind of conversation with your kids that you maybe wouldn't ordinarily have. So what are the kinds of things that would show up in a phone contract? Things that describe what's respectful, things that describe what's responsible, things that describe consequences associated with following or not following. The consequences is, by the way, both rewards and punishments. It's not just punishments. It's rewards and punishments. So let's take a look at those 3 categories of respectful, responsible, and consequences. Examples of being respectful. And these are things that we've woven into our contract. Oh, and by the way, I'll probably say this a little bit later on, but have your kids write the contract. Don't say, here's the contract, sign it. Why? It comes across as an imposition. What we realized was we did that at first, and it was a lot of uphill plowing. By the time we got to the last kids we've done this with, it was, here are 3 contracts, and they know how we feel about connected devices, because we talk about it. You guys write the contract. And it was so interesting, because they wrote a more restrictive contract than we would have. Victory lap. Oh, are you sure? I don't know if I could sign this. You're getting away with a lot. I don't know. All right, we'll try this. It was awesome. It was awesome. Okay, what are examples of being respectful? Put my smartphone away at public gatherings, at the dinner table, during family meetings, family events, and prayer. I won't make hurtful statements. I will tell you if I receive any communication that is hurtful, disturbing, or immoral. I won't like anything that is appropriate, rude, or vulgar. Kids don't get this. They get on, when they like something, they're associated with it. They get connected to it. I won't post or send any rude, immodest, or inappropriate messages, images, or pictures. What are other examples of being respectful? I won't use the smartphone to lie, deceive, or fool you or anyone else. I won't give out personal information. I'll keep my profile private, my location off. I'll give you access to my social media accounts at any time. I will give you access to my social media accounts at any time. I will give you access to my social media accounts at any time. And that's when they make up their second social media account that they just share with their friends. You got to know this. Kids are quick. They're going to outwit you. They're going to say they do that, but then they're going to hide stuff. This is the battle that we're facing, right? For a while, I know these are kind of cutesy anecdotes. Like one of the most popular apps in the App Store was a calculator app. Why would a calculator app be a popular app? Well, because it was a false icon for the app that your parents didn't want you to have. So you download that app, you put this icon to replace that app's cover, and now you get to have that icon you get to have that app on your phone.
That was 5 years ago.
That was 5 years ago, right? This is crazy, right? The stuff that kids can do. I will not view content that you disapprove of. Right? So these are, what are you doing? You're communicating your vision and your values, the things that are important to you, into a contract. What are examples of being responsible? I acknowledge that you are the owner of the smartphone and you are entrusting it to me. Your phone, and it happens to be in my hands. That's huge. It's not their phone. It's not their phone. It's your phone. It happens to be entrusted into their hands. Do you see that? It's that sense of identity and ownership. This is big deal stuff. Because of that, I will put my smartphone into your bedroom at X amount of time at night and on weekends. I won't enable or disable any settings without your permission. I won't add apps or download songs without your permission. These are all things that are connected to responsible use of the phone. These are just some examples. Again, we have some actual written contracts if you want to see them. This isn't meant to cover everything. If I break, damage, or ruin the smartphone, I'll pay for it to be repaired. And I will pay you X dollars per month for use of the smartphone. You know why? It's not mine, it's yours. But I'm using it, so I'm going to pay you $25 a month for that phone. That's my oldest kids. 18, 19, 21, pay $25 a month to us for our smartphone that happens to be in their hands. You can do this. It's a different way of seeing. Different attitude, different actions. I'll pay for any overage costs for data or minutes. It's a little outdated now. I'll take responsibility for any activity that happens on my smartphone. How? Consequences. We connect consequences. We establish rewards for responsible behavior. We establish rewards. So for instance, a big deal for kids is privacy. The idea that they're going to always give you total access to any text message that they ever send to any of their friends, that's responsible parenting until they reach a certain age. And then you got a dialogue. You got to give your kids some trust with certain kids to say, I'm going to trust that you're not going to be a knucklehead when you're texting those friends. Ooh, I know you're already feeling a little bit of but yeah, you're going to have to trust the kids. This is shepherding them because remember now, yeah, my 18-year-old doesn't live in our house anymore. She's finished high school. She's on missionary territory. She doesn't have much access to the internet, so we're okay. But my 19-year-old is away at college. But she's surrounded by good kids at Franciscan University of Steubenville, but that doesn't mean there aren't knucklehead kids doing knucklehead things there, right? So it's still locked down. But at some point, she can swipe it and do what she wants with it, and I'm not going to have a lot of control over that. But that's when she takes ownership of the account. Now it's not my account, now it's yours. You take it all, and give me back my phone. So I mentioned, I'll tell you consequences. This is engagement, and this is where the rubber meets the road. So we have a daughter who's 21. Oh, I'd love to come back and I'd love to live at home with you. I'm thrilled to have you live in our house, as long as you follow the rules of the house. What? Can I be a renter? No. I would love to have you live in our home. Here are the rules. I completely understand that you're 21 and you don't want to follow the rules. I completely get that. That makes perfect sense. You don't have to live with us. You can get an apartment and we'll visit. It's that important. I love you enough to not let you get away with things that I know are not good for you. Not easy, but it's loving. Establish punishments for failures to live up to this agreement. And remember, know your child. Your child's going to fail in some way, and maybe often. So the contract should change over time. All right, I'm pushing forward. 5 topics we're covering: awareness, protection. We're going to go to influence, freedom, and engagement. Let's cover influence. What do we mean by influence? Influence is connected to leadership. Remember, you're called to lead, provide, and protect your kids. A leader is someone who has followers. Followers means you're influencing them to move in a direction. This is a really important thing. The stronger the leader, the stronger the influence. Now, a leader's influence can be magnetic. The way you live your life can draw others after you. Setting a holy example will draw others after you. But influence is often connected to an encounter. What do I mean by that? An encounter is a meeting that impacts someone so much that they move in a different direction. This is a theological truth found very beautifully in the theology of Pope Benedict XVI. He talks all the time about the theology of encounter. And an encounter is when you come, it's actually like an astronomical term, where if one body in space comes in contact with another such that it changes its direction, it's had an encounter. It's had a meeting that is so significant that it changes its direction. And he says we're called to have an encounter with Christ, not just learn truths, not just follow rules, but to have an encounter with Christ. A personal meeting with Christ that is so big, it changes, it influences fundamentally from the inside out the direction that we're taking. We as parents, we have influence. We are called to have influence on our kids' lives. And we do that by the quality and depth of our encounters with them that can shift that direction. And that often happens through events. There's a breaking in quality. It's not just ordinary happenings, but crucial conversations. Special moments where you can have these kind of breakthroughs that can change kids' lives. So an encounter has an influence that is inbreaking, and a deep encounter can have a decisive impact on someone's life. Now, as parents, we have the privileged duty to be the primary influencer of our kids' lives. We do that by leading them. We foster and promote encounters with true, good, and beautiful realities. That's how we're leading them. However, Tim Bonaventure, he wrote he wrote a treatise to the heads of Franciscan communities in the 13th century called The 6 Wings of the Seraph. And in it, he says, the quality and depth of your leadership is not, first of all, shown by what you do to the people who follow you. But the most profound impact you have in leading them, the most profound influence you have, is not by what you do, but by what you permit. It's what you allow. That has a fundamental impact on influencing by what we permit and allow. This comes squarely in the face of the digital world. The digital world it's a world. It's not just random websites. It's immersive. It's encompassing. It's an entire world, but it lacks the depth of being. Sorry to speak metaphysically. It lacks the depth of reality of the real world created by God, where the true, the good, and the beautiful are fundamentally connected to the world that is created. This is an invention of humanity. It lacks the dimension of depth. It's only a surface, and it can stir, it can stimulate. It's a world. And that world influences your kids in the real world. Simple, common examples. You see it all the time. I'm going to get way more profound than this. Have you ever seen kids physically present in the real world, but personally present in the digital world? It's like a joke, right? Hey, are you there? Are you there? What? It's almost a default common thing in many places where Generation Z, this immersed generation that grew up as cyborgs, that's what Elon Musk said. He said, "What do you think about the future? That will we be cyborgs?" He said, "What do you mean, future? We're already there. What do you think your smartphone is? It's an extension of yourself." We're going to talk about the anxiety that kids have when they lose contact with their smartphone. Actually, how about adults? The default setting for adults is if you were without your phone for a couple of hours, would you get antsy? Or a couple of minutes? Can I make it from one room to the other without having contact with my phone? Do I get the phantom buzzing? Wait a minute, someone's calling me. This is an actual phenomenon, right? Wait a minute, I got a text. No, wait a minute, my phone is over there. This is a physiological thing. We're cyborgs. We still are so connected to the digital world through this device. Here's something in the real world. Go look it up online. Post something in the digital world. Let me have your phone. It's all these connections between the physical world and the digital world, but it goes a lot deeper. The deeper the influence, the interaction between these two worlds. We need to help our kids realize that when they live in that world, they're branding themselves. Oh, and it happens so quickly and easily. How they show up in the digital world leaves digital footprints visible in the real world. What does that look like? Well, I was talking to someone who is reflecting on college boards that review applications from students and whether students realize it or not, one of the basic things they do to distinguish one prospective student from another is what? Social media profiles. Kids' social profiles are looked at. What they don't realize, repeat after me, anything, everywhere, forever. Anything, everywhere, forever. What's that? Anything that's posted. Anything that's posted, presume it's going to go everywhere and it's going to be there forever. That's the default that our kids don't think about when they're posting stuff online. How they show up in the real world often ends up in the digital world, photos and videos. And so to get the kids to ask themselves, and I'm talking about older kids now that are actually engaging with social media platforms like Instagram, like how are you being influenced and how are you being an influencer? Because what happens to kids, if you want to see the effect of the influence on the internet, of social media, is just track someone's Instagram profile. When they first post, it's very naive and innocent, it's cute, and then in their attempts to get popularity is a downhill path towards immodesty, towards greater sexualization of themselves to get more attraction, more likes, more friends. It's the default thing that happens. But there's more. Language using group chat overflows into the real world. Sensuality and violence that kids are exposed to in the digital world. I was talking to a pediatrician. And she said that she was talking to these kids up to 16, right, pediatrician. She says that one of the biggest and most alarming phenomena that she experiences is when she asks the kids how they're doing, how disturbed they are by the stuff they're exposed to in their parents' presence. What are you talking about, Tom? Talking about the parents are watching a movie, and it's a very disturbing, violent movie, and mom and dad are not shocked by it. I'm shocked by it, but they're not shocked, so maybe I shouldn't be shocked. We become desensitized to what PG-13 are, what these things mean, and so kids get exposed in their latent period, their period of latency around their sense of being pure, their sense of being protected from is stripped away. And they get exposed to shocking images, shocking things that imprint on them, that shock them, that strike, that disturb their peace. This is what happens on the internet, and it flows into the dating world. If you knew your daughter had a 25% chance of being assaulted in a particular nightclub, would you let her go there? Let me say it again out loud. 25% chance, 1 in 4 chance of being assaulted if she went into that nightclub. Would you let her go there? Okay, you just basically said you're not going to let your daughter go to college. That's the latest statistic. 1 in 4 college-age women say they are sexually assaulted in college. What do you do about that? Well, one of the things we do is we say to our kids, see these 2 colleges? You're an adult. You can go to any college you want. If you want our financial support, you're going to go to this one or this one. It's very helpful. Now, hopefully it aligns with what they want, but just to know what kids are facing out there. I was on a plane going someplace to give some talks. The woman that sat next to me was a college student, and we just started talking about stuff, and she said, what are you going to talk about? And I mentioned talking about this. And she said, pornography is a big deal in college. She goes to a Christian college. She says, my roommate, her girlfriend, she's a girl, her roommate, it's a girl. Oh yeah, she watches pornography, but she only does it so that she'll know what her boyfriend expects from her sexually. Oh, I watch it with my boyfriend because that's what he wants to do. The demeaning way that this has impacted what it means for a boy to honor a girl, a young man to honor a young woman, has decayed so much. Read the studies. Desensitization. But there's more. This influence. The deepest level of influence is that the digital world shapes how I see. Remember that? How I see shapes how I relate, shapes how I behave. John Paul II says, the truth gets implanted into consciousness and it shapes how we see. That shapes our attitudes, how we relate, and that impacts our behavior, how we act. Guess what shapes how we see? Guess what's presenting ideas as true? It's the digital world. How I see myself, my family, my faith, and the meaning of my life are influenced like a tidal wave on the internet. If your kids are exposed to social media platforms, especially TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, those 3, and then others fall behind, Twitter. I don't even mention Facebook. It's not even worth mentioning for college-age kids and younger today. It is a fire hose. It is a tsunami. Let me pick out the strongest message I can tell you to say there's an anti-God, anti-Christ, anti-gospel spirit powerfully at work in these platforms. They post these little video clips, especially video. And you know what describes or characterizes these posts? They're so entertaining. So famous. They're music, humor, so well produced, clever. They'll speak the truth in a way that's just a little bit off. 666, just a little bit off of 777, perfect the fullness of God, 777. 6 will get you 7, the Antichrist. 6 looks like 7, but it falls short, and the most imperfect is that which looks the most perfect, but just falls short of it. That's what happens on the internet. It's clever, and it's seductive. Oh, they know how to present these seductive posts, and they're pervasive. They come at you from every side. And you know what? If you don't follow them, they're intimidating. So a few years ago, it was gay marriage, and now it's transgender. You know where transgender is spreading? TikTok. You don't believe me? Type it. Go type it in, TikTok. Type, I think I might be in the wrong body. Type in any terms connected to transgender, and you will see the most entertaining, clever, seductive, pervasive posts from kids that will draw them in to say, oh, that is so right. And then they're going to give messages that say, I'm only feeling darkness and hard and sad and out of my feeling right because of how I was brought up. And now I finally found my way home. It's demonic. This is the influence that happens to kids on the internet. It influences how they see. It changes their mindset. That's what's at stake in these platforms. There's also just the addictive quality. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I'll just mention it to you. Internet use disorder, you can look it up. It's basically saying we're addicted to the internet. And what does that look like? And actually, it's been refined. More recently, they've narrowed it. They've moved from internet use or internet disorder to smartphone addiction. The smartphone addiction, where the typical person is picking up their phone how many times a day? More than 1,000? How's that even possible? How is that even possible? So these exhibits, the qualities of an addiction, what do those look like? Preoccupation, withdrawal symptoms, irritability, anxiety, sadness, development of desensitized sensibilities, unsuccessful attempts to control the behavior, loss of interest in other activities, continued excessive use despite knowledge of problems, deceiving others, use of time to escape or relieve negative moods, jeopardizing other aspects of life. All of these things are just signs of internet use disorder. Just been drawn in. Now, why is it so addictive? Watch The Social Network. If you haven't seen it, watch The Social Network. These social media platforms are not your friends. You are their product. You make them money as long as you stay on their platform. This is a very disturbing documentary. Posts you see hook you. Why? Dopamine. You've heard it. I'm sure everybody in this room has heard about dopamine, that chemical released in the brain. It's like a reward, makes you feel good. You get a hit of dopamine when you come onto that site, and then you swipe, you scroll, you watch a video clip, go to the next one, go to the next one, go to the next one. And all of a sudden you look up, I just wasted 12 minutes of my life I'm never going to get back. And as the swiping goes on, it's like, whoa, that one isn't appropriate. Whoa, that one, the language there, I would never hear that language anywhere. And then they stop and think, wait a minute, all my kids are hearing all that language. Language that would never be acceptable in the real world, in the digital world. Oh, par for the course. Let's keep going. Social media use fosters depression, sadness, and anxiety of kids. Latest study, what percentage of teens struggle with anxiety and depression as a result of social media use? 83%. The default setting is you give your kids access to social media platforms, they're going to get anxious, they're going to feel isolated, they're going to grow in the sense of being lonely, they're going to feel weighed down, depressed. That's the default setting. If they don't, it's an exception. Why? Their image online determines their sense of self-worth in the real world. Here's the influence between the two worlds. And they're invested in what? False reality. I want to get liked. So what they'll say and do online is to just get, please, remember now, what do they want? They want to belong, they want to be accepted, they want to have a sense of union. And what happens if that experience in the real world is sad? If it's hard? When they go online? Why wouldn't I want to go into the digital world? For connection, purpose, meaning, entertainment, avoidance, to ease pain. You know, one of the things that fosters more self-harm online? Self-harm, the dynamic of self-harm. Kids cutting themselves, snapping themselves, doing other things to harm themselves. One of the factors that helps foster self-harm is the social network of self-harmers. You get that? They find a group that has found communion, connection, a sense of belonging. You also self-harm. I'm now connected to you. How do we combat this? It's enormous. How do we combat the influence of the digital world with the real world? Develop the richness of their experience in the real world of their family. Involve them in other influential worlds that have an encompassing reality. What's a world that our kids are in that have an encompassing reality? Sports. You get them engaged in sports and they can get encompassed. They can get lost in that world. Arts, academics. These are worlds that they can give themselves to. Oh yeah, the spiritual world. These are all happenings in the real world. Kids settle for the digital world when their friends, when their community is saying, spend time in the digital world. This is where we're having life together. But when that's shut down, you give them the opportunity, you give them options, you give them experiences in the real world that say, why do we even want to waste time over there? That's an effort. That takes effort. Okay, how do we get there? Here's what we're talking about today. Awareness, protection, influence, freedom. Let's talk about freedom. And then we'll go to engagement. I'm going to go quickly through freedom. This is the Catholic theology of freedom. If you've never heard it before, get ready. I'm going to come at you fast. Father, let's go. Okay. Well, first of all, let's talk about the goal. The goal is we want our kids ready to face the real world, the digital world when they're in the real world by themselves. We want to shepherd them while they're in our homes to be increasingly trusted and entrustable with access to the digital world. That's what we want. That's called responsible freedom. We want them to grow in responsible freedom. Responsible means they can act with self-determination. Self-determination. It can come from the inside. They're doing the right thing because on the inside, it's what they really want. Freedom, that concept, there's a vitality to it. There's a depth to it. There's a richness to it. Meaning, you grow in your capacity or you diminish your capacity depending on how you live. So it grows and diminishes. It moves from the outside to the inside. Let's talk about how we experience freedom. 3 levels of freedom. There's freedom from. That's the experience of space. There's freedom to. That's the experience of choice. And there's freedom for. That's the experience of commitment. Those are the levels of freedom. Space, choice, commitment. Hold on to this. This is for parenting. This is for raising a boy into a man. This is about us living our lives. It's growth and freedom in our lives. Freedom from is infancy. It's about containment. It's about compliance. The freedom of an infant is the experience of space. What does an infant do to sleep peacefully? You put the infant in the crib. And there are the 4 walls. You got a little bit of space, but you're not climbing out. That's the basic level of freedom. The most fundamental level of freedom is I've got some space to move, but I also have some walls and limits. Psychologically, they say the 2 most terrifying experiences are being trapped and abandoned. Think about that. That's where the 4 walls close in. I have now no space to operate. I'm trapped. That's terrifying. And I'm abandoned is when the 4 walls fall down. And now I have no ability to orient myself at all. I have no limits, no sense of being able to get a boundary around anything. So having that sense of freedom from is saying, you know what? It is freedom when you have some space, but you've got walls. And they're going to contain you, and you're going to comply. By the way, this operates in the real world too. You go to any business, They have a firewall that's going to prevent you from getting stuff onto your internet. It's compliance, it's containing. The second is freedom too. That's adolescence. As your kids are growing up, you teach them about consequences. Consequences are both rewards and punishments. And what's happening here as parents is that you are saying, I am the embodiment of the law in your life. You don't say it like that. But basically what you're saying is, I'm going to be teaching you by how I parent you, act this way, and you're going to get rewarded. That's a good thing. I'm going to teach you to do the good thing. You do this other thing, I'm going to punish you so that you learn that's a bad thing. It's coming from the outside, and it's showing them right and wrong through consequences, rewards and punishments. But ultimately, an adult way of living is about consent or commitment. I've committed myself to this way of life so that the rewards and punishments come from within me. I do what's right because inside I know that this makes me more alive. I don't do that because I know this diminishes me. It breaks me on the inside. I'm not being true to who I am. Space, choice, consent, or commitment. Now this plays itself out in the digital world. Let me just give you a simple example, actually, like in the business world, all right? We have a supply closet, and there are 3 ways of relating to the supply closet. The first way is we have someone sitting there, and when you need something, come, and you're going to check it out. It's locked. There's no way in. That's containment, right? The second way to do it is, you know what? We're going to come up with a total of what is in there in the closet at the beginning of the month, and at the end of the month, we're going to check. And if there's stuff not accounted for, guess what? You're going to be punished. So you're setting up consequences. There's no lock on it, but now we're treating you like you actually have some ability to act appropriately. The third is to say, you know what? You're all adults. Don't steal. We're not even going to measure it. That's growth in freedom. This also plays out in how we live lives and how we relate to the internet. So technology containment is what? Possession. That's the first thing, right? That's saying, I'm not going to ask you not to look at stuff. I'm taking the phone away. And guess what? When I take away the phone, you're not going to look at stuff. I'm shutting down the Wi-Fi. You don't get access to that. Containment is a possession is a containment strategy. Your location of connected devices, time boundaries, friends visiting, passwords, parental controls, providers, all of that protection level, that's all containment stuff. Got it? But we got to go beyond that. We got to move to consequences, and that's where contracts come in. Contracts can be a great way for you to say, the way you use your devices are going to involve some rewards and some punishments. The way you use them in the digital world, how much transparency do I have versus how much trust do I give? Good choices are rewarded with greater freedom, greater access. Bad choices are punished, and you have more containment. See how that works? So as they're growing, if they're rewarded, they continue to grow with greater accessibility. If they fail, they fall back to more infantile ways of being related to. There's more containment. What about commitment? Commitment at highest level is where you dialogue about your experience and theirs. You have solidarity. You're going to model the ideal for them. You become a digital missionary. You're going to be spending time on the internet for doing godly purposes, doing important things. You recognize that there's spiritual warfare involved here. And so you're going to do that. You're going to become a champ for Christ. This is, I'll tell you what that is in just a second here. Being a champ for Christ means you're going to foster chastity, modesty, purity, and self-control. If you want your kids to safely use the internet, they better be champs for Christ. They better understand chastity, modesty, purity, and self-control. First of all, for Christ. Christ is going to be the source of them living this out and the goal. Christ is going to give them the strength of living this out. Now, growth in freedom is growth in virtue. Virtue is what? It's human excellence. It's flourishing It's the human being flourishing and doing so in a way that's harmonious with life. Virtue comes from a word in Latin, virtu, which means strength or power. Virtue is strength. And so what we'll find is that virtues grow together. You want your child to be modest? They're not going to be modest unless they're also chaste and pure and self-controlled. You see that the virtues grow together in our tradition. Now, when a virtue is present, it's manifested as being easy, prompt, and joyful. So I'm going to do the right thing. Like I'm going to put my phone down, I'm going to tend to my kids and all that. And you know what? I do that easily, quickly, and without any problem. I find joy in it. But if all of a sudden doing the good thing, it's difficult. It doesn't happen quickly. It's slow. And I do it reluctantly. I'm still doing a good thing. It just means that I'm not yet virtuous. The virtue yet doesn't really live in me yet. And so we want our kids to grow in virtue, grow in virtue. So how do we help them become these champs for Christ? Let's talk about chastity. Chastity is the successful integration of their sexual dimension within their lives so that there's a sense of peace. There's ordered desires that are within them that lead them to God. That they can look upon a beautiful woman walks by and they say, looking upon that beautiful woman, I see the beauty of God. Right? That was not a joke, but no one laughed. Okay. That's hard. That's chastity. Chastity is what we're called to, that ordering of our desires in a way that lead us to God. Catechism of the Catholic Church talks all about this in great detail. I won't go into it further here. What's modesty? Modesty is simple. How you show up sends a message. How you show up sends a message. And it's more than just how you dress, but yes, it's also how you dress. And remember now, if the kids are exposed online to all of this immodesty, it'll wash over them and influence them to be more immodest. They'll find pressures in the real world against them being modest. You know what their best protection is going to be outside of their home? Their friends. What's purity? If modesty is how you show up sends a message, purity is what you allow to show up affects you. Impurity is when you have that which is unclean showing up and it washes over you and it leaves a stain upon you. What you allow to show up affects you. When I look at impurity, I become impure. What's pure is unpolluted. It's clean. It's undefiled. You can see how purity and modesty go together. How I'm showing up, what do I allow to show up? What's self-control? Self-control is a form of self-mastery. It's the capacity to restrain ourselves. The one who doesn't restrain himself in what is licit will not restrain himself in what is illicit, St. Augustine. What he's saying there is, if we just think, well, I'm not doing anything bad, I got really close to the line, but it was okay, I'm going to fall over. I'm going to tip over the line into what was not okay. So I need to give myself room to stay on the side that is okay. In our home, one of the things that we practice comes from St. Thomas Aquinas. He says there's a beautiful call that if you hear it and respond. Aquinas says this: to turn a boy into a man, it is required a difficult good. You want to turn a boy into a man? It requires a bonum arduum. The bonum arduum, the arduous good. What's the arduous good? The arduous good is the good thing that young man sees and says, that must be. I must support that, promote that, make that be real. I must help achieve that good thing. But in saying I'm going to commit myself to doing that, It's not going to happen easily, quickly. It's not going to be soft. It's going to require sacrifice. It's going to even be painful. But I'm committed to that big thing. The bonamadu. Too often we as parents want to keep our kids protected from harshness in the world. And we end up keeping them soft. Soft. What we need is to expose our kids to the difficult and not be afraid of the difficult. You have a simple choice, parents. You can choose the hard easy or the easy hard. If you let your kids simply experience what is easy, comfortable, soft, and nice, life's going to get harder as they get older. The easy hard. The hard easy says, I love you enough to invest you into situations where it's going to be hard. You're going to have to give of yourself sacrificially. You're going to face difficult goods. And if you do that, life's going to get easier. Because virtue's easy. It happens promptly and joyfully. I said to my kids last summer, get a job or I'll get one for you. And when they couldn't find a job, I sent out a note. And the note was to a bunch of friends, I got 2 young men ready to work, but there are only 2 requirements. The first is the work has to be hard. It has to be hard work. And second, you can't pay them. There it is. I got a lot of takers. They were lifting rocks, digging holes, putting in fences, pulling up bushes, out in the hot sun. They came home dirty, smelly, and happy. It was amazing. The hard, easy. You want your kids to be champs for Christ? You want your kids to be able to take on the soft, easy, experientially satisfying world of the internet? Give them the joy of doing the difficult good. Form them to be young men and not to settle for the softness the internet promotes. Let's take another break, and then we'll, a 15-minute break, and then we'll go into the last section, which is on engagement.